Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to Chapter 16. We're talking about the survey of life. We're talking about protists, and we've talked about the algae, and now we're talking about the protozoans. The protozoans are the protists that are most like animals. Sporozoans is our next group of protists, of animal-like protists. Sporozoans are so-called sporozoans because they're capable of making spores. When a sporozoan encounters a hazardous environment, like that are being attacked by an immune system, they will wrap up into a tight little thing called a spore, and then they'll just sit and wait for the hazardous environment to go away, and they pop back out again. So they're really hard to kill. A very common sporozoan, or a very well-known sporozoan, is Plasmodium. And Plasmodium is the one that's responsible for malaria. All sporozoans are parasites. They all have very complicated life cycles that usually involve two or more hosts. This shows how you get malaria. So the malaria protozoan lives within the salivary glands of mosquitoes. How tiny. Did you know that mosquitoes have salivary glands? Mosquitoes have salivary glands. How tiny do they have to be? Plasmodium lives in them. When a mosquito bites you, they inject saliva to keep the blood flowing. That's actually what causes the bump. Most people are allergic to mosquito saliva, and because we're allergic to mosquito saliva, we get a bump when a mosquito bites us because they inject the saliva. When the mosquito injects the saliva, ones that are carrying the Plasmodium protozoan, they inject the Plasmodium protozoan. It will then migrate into your liver, and from your liver it will turn into the adult form, and then it will invade your red blood cells, and when it invades your red blood cells, it will then eat your red blood cells. That's why you get so tired when you have malaria. And then it will release eggs, and then the eggs get picked up by another mosquito when it bites you. Very complicated, very, very complicated life cycle. All sporozoans have complicated life cycles, and they're all parasites. Ciliophorans, these are called the ciliates. Again, cilia bearing. One of the poster children of the group of protists are Paramecium. You've heard of Paramecium. This is a Paramecium. We can see the cilia that are covering the body of this protist. They're almost all free-living. They're found in saltwater and freshwater, and again, there's lots of species of ciliophorans. They use the cilia for locomotion. The cilia work very much like oars, like boat oars, for making their way, pulling their way through the water. Ciliophorans, the ciliates, Paramecium. We've talked about the plant-like protists. We've just finished now talking about the animal-like protists. Let's talk about the fungus-like protists. Our first fungus-like protist are the Acrasia mycotans. This is another name that is one of my favorite names because the name means confusing two-thing fungus. What a wonderful name. The guy that found this stuff, the guy that named this stuff said, yeah, man, I don't know what it is. This is confusing. Confusing two-thing fungus. The reason why it's called the confusing two-thing fungus is because Acrasia mycotans, these are called cellular slime molds. Slime mold, what a great name. Cellular slime molds, when food is plentiful, will live unicellularly, which means one little cell at a time, bunch of little cells, just eating stuff, decomposing dead matter, doing their job. When food becomes scarce, all of these unicellular little slime mold critters will then coalesce. They'll coagulate into a little slug-like thing, about the size of a pencil eraser. Not very big. And then they'll leave. They'll migrate as a clump, as a lump, somewhere else. This is the multicellular version of a cellular slime mold. And then once they get to a new area where there's lots of food, they split back out again and go back to living unicellularly again. Life doesn't care. Life doesn't care about our need to understand things, about our need to classify things, about our need to know how stuff works. Life's like, yo, I just do it because it works. So is it unicellular or is it multicellular? And with this, I mean, it's kind of both. I mean, it's right there in the name. Confusing two-thing fungus. I mean, you could make this up. That's a cellular slime mold. One interesting thing about a cellular slime mold. So imagine that a whole classroom of us, we are going to represent a cellular slime mold. And once we decide that there's not enough food, we all get together and we link arms together, and then we all truck off and go somewhere else to where, you know, there's plenty of food. And then we just kind of unlink arms, and now we just go back to work living on our own. That's a cellular slime mold. Our next is called a plasmodial slime mold, and this is called myxomycota. Myxo means mucus, so the name of this thing is mucus fungus. How delightful of a term is that? Exactly, snot fungus. There's actually one species of a plasmodial slime mold that's called dog vomit fungus. Feel free to look that up if you want to, but don't come crying to me if you actually do. So a plasmodial slime mold is similar. They will live unicellularly when food is plentiful, but when food is not plentiful, they clump together and migrate somewhere, like we see here. They migrate somewhere to go find something to eat. But when they do it as a giant bag of cytoplasm. All of the cell membranes will fuse together and make a big, shaky sack of cytoplasm inside. Hence, plasmodial slime mold, a big group of cytoplasm inside. If humans were to do this, when we all go to link together, all of our skins would make this big floppy skin sack on the outside, and all of our guts and internal organs would all just be mixing around on the inside. And then when we got where we were going, we would split back out again and turn into, ourselves again. Well, sort of. If all the guts and internal pieces are all mixing around in there, how do I know whose I got? Like, damn it, Jeff, you took my arm again. I told you last time to stop it. Take your own. Leave mine alone. Plasmodial slime mold. Big mass, migratory mass of cytoplasm. Our next is an oomycotin. It's not an oomycota, it is oomycota. Means egg, so it's an egg fungus. Some are parasitic and some are saprophytic. Parasitic means I'm attacking a living host. Saprophytic means I am attacking a dead thing. So either I'm making it sick or I'm breaking down something that's already dead, a saprophyte. And usually when we talk about a saprophyte, you usually don't say scavenger. It's usually breaking down a dead plant. Not always, but usually. They send root-like threads into their host. The root-like threads are feeding structures. These root-like threads dig into the host, and then they release digestive enzymes that break down the host, and then turn it into a digested soup, and then they suck back up the nutrients, and that's how they feed, that's how they eat. It was an oomycotin that was responsible for the Irish potato famine in the mid-1800s. You need a little context to understand why this was such a big deal. Um, Prior to the colonization of America, potatoes weren't in Europe. Once we came to America, they discovered potatoes. They took potatoes back. Potatoes became a really, really, really staple food source amongst the poor people. And the reason why is that poor people don't have much land. And because they don't have much land, they can't grow a lot of foods. They had to work for somebody else. Well, the cool thing about a potato is you really don't need very much land to grow a lot of food. So poor people, poor Irish, they were able to finally make enough food, grow enough food on their small little plots of land. And so something like 75 to 80% of the diet, of the dishes of the poor people at this time in Ireland was all potatoes. They lived completely on potatoes. Well, what happened was during these 5-ish years, it was really cool and rainy. And because it was really cool and rainy, this my cotin did really well. And by doing really well, what we meant was it was actually literally rotting the potatoes in the ground. The people would go to dig the potatoes up, and they would be mush. It would be trash. You couldn't eat it. And because 75 to 80% of their diet was potatoes, what we now have is a famine. We have people that don't have nearly enough food. 1 million Irish starved, and another 1 million left. So in the mid-1800s is when a whole lot of Irish people came to America. And it's only been in the last 10 years. This was 170 years ago. It's been within the last 10 years that the population of Ireland has recovered. Before 1845, there were 6 million Irish. 1 million died, and 1 million left. That means that a third of the country was gone. And it took them a century and a half to recover from the Irish potato famine.